Hey there, it's been a little while since I recorded a video, so I wanted to get back to you and give you an update on where we are. This is Thursday, December 5th, as I'm recording this. Kind of a continuation of where we were the last time. We're still waiting for the Trump administration to be inaugurated in about a month and a half, I guess, now. He's announcing cabinet picks. They are as crazy as they ever were, maybe even getting worse with people like Pete Hegseth, who's been found or been accused, I should say, of sexual assault, of alcoholism, and is totally unqualified to lead the Department of Defense, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to go through all the details of the people who have been nominated. So I want to talk today about this idea of how engaged should we be. This is coming from a couple of people that I really respect who have come out in the last couple of weeks. So the first one I want to talk about is my friend and mentor, George Cow, who's a business coach. And George made a video about keeping politics in perspective. He made some good points and some that I tend to disagree with a little bit. So first of all, his great points. He talked about how politics is not necessarily the most important thing in our lives, or maybe shouldn't be. And maybe it's too important to me, but he talked about how our spiritual health is number one. Our physical health is number two. Our close relationships with people around us is number three. Our business or career would be number four. And according to George, politics would be number five. And these are things not only that have big impact, of course, taking care of our spirit, taking care of our body is really important, big impact, but also things that we can affect on a daily basis, whereas politics, not so much. So I do agree with George in that sense, but as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, why is politics so important to me? Why do I vote the way that I do? Why am I so passionate about it? And I realized that most of it is not stuff that directly relates to me. It's not like women's rights or women's rights being taken away are going to impact me directly. It's not like immigration is going to impact me directly. A lot of things that I'm voting in favor of don't impact me directly, but it's because I care about the overall whole. So politics is still very important to me, but I have found that maybe taking a step back is the best thing for my mental health right now, which leads me to something I heard from Charles Eisenstein, another person who I follow and whose opinions I respect, and he was talking about this idea of a news fast. And as I was leading my group of people who are getting together to talk about how do we deal with the aftermath of the election, how do we deal with the grief, the anger, all those things that come out of it, but also what do we do going forward, I found that some of them were news junkies, kind of like I am, and had intentionally or unintentionally pulled back from the news. And one of the things I realized when turning the news on after the election was a lot of what they talk about is not reporting just on what happened, but also a lot of what's going to happen. Fear mongering, and maybe that's intentional, maybe it's not, because it keeps us viewing. But I don't have the time or the energy or the bandwidth to get caught up in every little thing that might happen in the future. And we've already seen, like with the nomination of Matt Gaetz, what people were all spun up about, that fell apart. So we don't know what's going to happen going forward. We want to be vigilant. This is the balance, right? We want to be vigilant. I want to be informed, but I don't want to be sitting in a place right now where I'm upset about something that may or may not happen in the future. So I'm not going to let what I'm worried about tomorrow steal my joy from today. And that's advice I would advise for all of us. So I think for me, one of the lessons from this is to maybe step back a little bit from things, to be a little bit more like some of the people I've criticized in the past who said that both sides are the same and my life doesn't change no matter what. Because our life might change, but maybe not as significantly as we think. And when Trump was in office the first time, a lot of us saw that as a disaster, and it wasn't great. I don't want to pretend that it was, but it wasn't as bad as some of us feared. So let's take a breath while we're in this in-between state. Let's see what's going to happen, and let's let things play out. The third and last point I want to make today is I interviewed recently for my podcast, and I'll link to it in this video. I interviewed a guy named Rafael Garcia. Now, Rafael is a American Indian, or an Indian, I should say, born in Mexico. He's lived all over the world. He lives in the United States now. And we had a really fascinating conversation. He had a near-death experience in 2004 where it was revealed to him a lot of things about the way the universe works. He's also had spiritually transformative experiences since then and had downloads or communications and is clairvoyant and has predicted the future. Now, Rafael thought that Trump would win the first time. I think in 2015, he said he knew that Trump was going to win. And he thought that Trump was going to bring in disruption, was going to expose corruption, was going to basically tear down existing systems and lead us to an age that's going to be better. So Rafael was disappointed when at the end of Trump's term, things essentially hadn't changed much. So Rafael was saying that he knew that Trump was going to be elected this time as well. And of course, that turned out to be correct. Now, when Rafael talks about Trump bringing down corruption, exposing corruption, et cetera, it doesn't mean that Trump is the savior, as some people might see that, but more of maybe he's the one that actually exposes the corruption through his actions himself. So what would that look like, for example? Well, what about putting all these incompetent people in charge of the government? What about taking billionaires and putting them in charge of things that they know nothing about? People who are sexual offenders, people who are literally convicted criminals. The fact that the president, our president right now, or Trump is going to be president, is a convicted felon. So that might expose some of this stuff for people. And if these agencies fall apart, which I never root against America. I never root against America. One, I live in America. They'll be rooting against my self-interest. I don't want to see things fall apart. I don't want to see violence. I don't want to see economic destruction or disruption. But maybe that's what it's going to take for us to wake up. And so if we look at this in that sense, if we look at this in a sense as maybe as a wake-up call, which I did actually kind of before the election, I didn't want to admit it. And I was hoping that we could learn lessons and move in a positive direction without going through pain. But that's not how human beings operate. And I'm afraid that's not the way it's going to work this time either. So let's try to keep a balanced approach as we go through these things. Let's look for the silver linings. This doesn't mean to roll over and give in, because while some people say, well, things are ordained, they're meant to be this way, and because this happens, it's going to be good, that doesn't mean that we aren't put here to fight the good fight. I believe that I am on this planet right now to be resistant to that, to be a light worker, to bring light to what I perceive as darkness, and to stand up. That's what I think that's what I'm here for, and I believe that's probably why you're listening to me also. So that was it for today. Let me know if you have any questions or any comments. If you'd like to have things you'd like to see in future videos, let me know that as well. Have a great day. Hope to hear from you.